Imagine this scenario, and maybe this is your scenario right now. You and your partner are on the fast track, the high-speed lane toward financial independence.
Right.
You've tracked every single dollar. You've embraced, I don't know, a 60, maybe 70% savings rate. And your spreadsheets are telling you this beautiful story.
Total certainty.
Oh, cool.
A meticulously planned financial escape route. You've got your portfolio balance, your withdrawal rate, your whole life post-work all mapped out.
And freedom is scheduled for age 40, 7 years from today. But then the biggest variable you could possibly imagine steps onto that spreadsheet. That perfect 7-year plan meets the profound, beautiful, and, well, utterly expensive reality of wanting to build a family. You decide you want children.
And that is, bar none, the single most powerful financial decision you will ever make. It brings in complexity, it introduces these mandatory, non-negotiable costs, and, just massive uncertainty.
And here's the mini payoff for today.
Yeah.
That one decision, the decision to have a family, it didn't just push your fire date back by a year or two.
No.
For so many aggressive savers, it completely transforms your timeline from 7 years of intense saving to, well, potentially 20 years or more of grinding it out.
The gap is just staggering. And so the perception becomes that FIRE is really only for DINKs dual income, no kids. It feels like the two goals are just fundamentally at odds.
So we have to ask the core question today. Is that 20-year delay inevitable? Is achieving true financial independence really incompatible with the logistics, the huge costs, and all the complexity of raising children in today's world?
Well, our mission today is to prove that it is absolutely not inevitable. Families are successfully achieving financial independence every single day.
Okay.
And they succeed not by just ignoring the cost of children, but by transforming that entire calculation. They treat their kids not as some huge line item expense to bear, but as integral, active, and increasingly financially savvy partners in a unified family strategy.
That's our podcast for today. We're going way beyond simple budgeting. We're getting into the specific, practical, and often really surprising steps that real families take, from legal foundations all the way to global geo-arbitrage, to manage the financial storm of raising kids without giving up their goal of early freedom.
It involves mastering the biggest expenses. We're talking childcare, education, and risk management. It's really about managing all that financial uncertainty with the confidence of someone who has a plan for every contingency.
Welcome to today's podcast from Project FIRE. Let's dive into the strategies that make family FIRE possible.
So we have to start with the reality check. The decision to have children is emotional, it's spiritual, it's relational. It should never, ever be boiled down to just a financial calculation. Love and purpose, they just outweigh the cost.
Absolutely. No one is sitting there with a spreadsheet deciding the fate of their family based on a single line item. But once that beautiful emotional decision is made, the financial consequence has to be confronted.
It has to be.
Because it is massive. It injects huge costs and, crucially, adds uncertainty to every single future projection, which is, the absolute enemy of an aggressive FIRE timeline.
And let's define that cost not just as an expense, but as an opportunity cost.
Okay.
If you're a high-earning professional with a 75% savings rate, bringing in a couple of kids might delay your FIRE timeline by maybe 4 years. But if the decision means one spouse has to step away from the workforce, even for a little while.
Oh, it's huge.
It's not just $16,000 in expenses anymore.
Yeah.
That's the complete loss of a high income stream and all the compounding potential of that income for 5, maybe 10 years.
That lost income is where the real delay comes from. For a couple earning a median household income, adding kids could easily push financial independence back by a decade, maybe more.
So the goal has to shift immediately. It's not about accepting the delay as some kind of penalty. It's about immediately redefining the spend required. You have to ask, how much more income do we need to generate? Or how much discretionary spending do we have to cut to absorb the annual cost of the kids without totally wrecking our timeline?
Let's use some hard numbers, because FIRE is always about the math. If a family's current pre-kid expense budget is, say, $72,000 a year, and they figure 2 kids will add another $16,000 annually.
Right.
That $16,000 is the target. That money has to be found right away, either through a new income stream, side hustles, or some extreme cutting somewhere else.
And that $16,000 has a devastating compounding effect on your final number. If your annual expenses jump from $72K to $88K, and you're using the rule of 25...
25 times your annual expenses.
Exactly. Your required FIRE number just jumped from $1.8 million to $2.2 million.
Wow. So that is an immediate $400,000 increase in your retirement goal.
Instant.
Just because of the added annual expense, that is a really powerful, tangible financial burden.
And it's front-loaded. It's not spread out evenly over 18 years. The most significant immediate financial hurdle is almost always childcare.
The first 5 years, right? Ages 0 to 5. I've heard it called the financially and emotionally dark tunnel in the FIRE community.
That's a good way to put it. The cost of full-time center care can be anywhere from $1,000 to over $3,000 a month, depending on where you live.
And that one line item alone can just crush a high savings rate. It could take you down to nearly zero.
And when you look at that cost, you realize why flexibility is the ultimate FIRE strategy. The family needs a plan to either bypass that tunnel completely or just drastically reduce its financial hit.
Wait, I want to pause on that idea, the opportunity cost you mentioned. It's so often overlooked. You talked about the lost income from a spouse leaving the workforce. Does the timing of when you have kids, like before you hit major career milestones versus after, does that significantly change the long-term math?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if a couple waits until they've already hit coast FIRE, where their invested assets alone are projected to grow to their retirement number without any more contributions.
So they're just working to cover living expenses at that point.
Exactly. The financial stress is so much lower. But if the child comes during the absolute peak of your savings phase, that financial interruption is, well, it's catastrophic. It's not just a delayed timeline. It's permanently missed, compounding on maybe 6 figures of lost annual savings. Strategic timing, while it's tough to plan perfectly, is just paramount.
That framing changes everything. So if we accept that the first 5 years are the biggest financial drain, how do we apply that radical flexibility that FIRE demands to drastically reduce or even eliminate the crushing burden of childcare costs while still making sure the family maintains high income potential?
The early childhood costs are the main battlefield for family FIRE. If you can control those, you shrink that immediate $400,000 increase in your FIRE number.
Okay, let's talk strategy 1. Childcare cost mitigation. The traditional options, private daycare, a full-time nanny, they're just so expensive. So FIRE families have to innovate, right? They use cooperative models.
A great example is the shared nanny model. Hiring a dedicated professional nanny is, for most, just prohibitive for one family. But if you share that nanny with 1 or 2 other local families, the cost per family often drops to be competitive with, or even cheaper than, traditional daycare.
Especially if you have more than one kid.
Exactly, especially with 2 or 3 children. You get a better caregiver-to-child ratio for less money.
And for parents who have already hit a certain level of financial freedom, I guess the answer might be a totally different kind of work schedule. We often hear about parental trading, but first we should probably define the terms you hear a lot: Coast FIRE and Barista FIRE.
That's a great point. So Coast FIRE means you have enough money invested today that if you never contributed another dollar, your portfolio would still hit your target FIRE number by your traditional retirement age. Once you hit Coast FIRE, you're really only working to cover your current annual expenses.
Okay, and Barista FIRE.
Barista FIRE means you cover your expenses by working part-time, maybe at a job that offers health benefits, like, working at a coffee shop. Hence the name barista.
Got it. So if a parent has reached Coast FIRE, they could switch to a part-time Barista FIRE role, maybe work 3 days a week, and then they could trade childcare with another parent in a similar situation who works on their off days.
Precisely. It's a pure exchange of time. No money changes hands, which eliminates taxable income, and you keep a really high degree of control over your child's environment.
But the most scalable solution you mentioned is the babysitting cooperative or co-op. That sounds like a total administrative nightmare for parents who are already super busy.
It sounds complex, but modern technology makes it pretty seamless. It's basically a large local group of parents who exchange services based on a point or hour system. Parents earn points by watching other children, and then they spend those points when they need a sitter for a date night or a work appointment.
So if I watch your kids for 3 hours, I bank 3 hours of credit that I can then use with any other member of the co-op, not just you.
Exactly. And there are apps specifically to facilitate this, to track the banked hours, show who's available, and manage the whole exchange transparently. It takes away the awkwardness of owing one specific person a favor, and it just greatly increases the chance of finding a sitter because you're drawing from a pool of 20 or 30 families instead of just your one neighbor.
Okay, so let's assume we survive the childcare tunnel. Strategy 2 is about minimizing the next set of costs, activities and experiences. We all know the research says experiences but more happiness than material goods.
And that finding is so critical here. Kids remember the time and the simple fun. They really don't remember the cost. They remember pizza picnics or exploring a local creek or just a long, rambling conversation in the car. The key is parental presence and novelty.
Which leads directly to avoiding what we might call overrated spending.
Okay.
You mentioned Disney wine as an example of expensive, line-filled, mindless consumption. I have to push back a little there.
Okay.
For a lot of families, Disney or similar attractions are a tradition, they're multi-generational, and they're a huge bonding experience. Isn't labeling it mindless consumption a bit harsh, especially if, say, a grandparent is footing the bill?
That's a fair pushback, and you're right, nuance is key. If it's a multi-generational tradition and it's budgeted for, that's great. The critique from the FIRE perspective is specifically against the standard American vacation pattern, spending huge sums on young kids who won't even remember the trip, or whose happiness is just overshadowed by exhaustion and long lines and massive markups on food and merchandise.
So the recommendation is to wait.
Right, if you are going to spend that kind of premium, the advice is to wait until the children are 7 to 10 years old, so they genuinely form lasting memories of it.
That makes a lot more sense. It shifts the question from should we go to when is the best time to get the maximum memory value for the lowest long-term financial impact.
Exactly. So what are the high-value, low-cost alternatives?
Look local first. Instead of expensive private leagues, check out your local park districts. They offer organized sports, dance, music lessons for a fraction of the cost.
And libraries. Libraries are essential. They're a free resource for everything from books to audiobooks, and they often host free family events.
And low-cost social activities are vital. Scouting programs offer great structure and community without the huge price tag of competitive sports. For entertainment, skip the pro leagues. Minor league baseball, or even local high school games, give you the fun of being a spectator without the $40 hot dogs.
And when it comes to hobbies that need gear, you just apply the basic FIRE principle. Buy used. Wait until a gaming console is 2 generations old, then pick it up on Craigslist with a huge stack of games for maybe $100. Or simple things like Dungeons and Dragons, which just needs paper, pencils, and imagination.
Outdoor experiences are the ultimate win-win, too. Hiking, camping in state or national parks. You're teaching resilience, self-reliance, a love for nature, and the cost is basically gas and groceries.
The peer pressure is real. How do FIRE parents handle the social minefield of expensive extracurriculars when all the child's friends are in, a $5,000 a year traveling soccer league?
That's where you need core conviction. You have to budget for the activities you really value, the ones that teach grit or social skills or a true passion. But parents have to be comfortable drawing a line against those high-cost, high-commitment options unless the child is truly elite and fully committed.
It requires parents to proactively decide their values, instead of just reacting to what the neighbors are doing. If you value your freedom and retirement at 45, you have to be able to say, we love that activity, but that traveling league is just not in the family budget.
And that statement teaches the child a valuable lesson about priorities.
It teaches stewardship. So by controlling the massive variable costs of the early years, that immediate financial drain is reduced. But now we have to look ahead to the next enormous cost that impacts every family's long-term plan: college.
That raises our next critical challenge. How do we strategically save for tuition decades from now, maximizing the tax benefits of specialized accounts while minimizing the negative impact on financial aid eligibility?
Saving for college is complicated by all the uncertainty. Will they even need a 4-year degree? Will they pick an apprenticeship? Will they get a full scholarship? This uncertainty makes the choice of savings vehicle absolutely critical.
The great debate, right? The 529 plan versus a standard taxable brokerage account. For a FIRE family, the choice really boils down to the trade-off between tax benefits and flexibility.
Let's start with the 529 plan advantages. The core benefit is really powerful: tax-free growth and, crucially, tax-free withdrawals for qualified educational expenses.
And qualified expenses is pretty broad now, isn't it?
It is. It covers K through 12 tuition up to $10,000 a year, higher education, apprenticeship programs, and even up to $10,000 in student loan repayment per beneficiary. They also offer potential state tax deductions or credits, which is a huge bonus depending on your state. And most importantly, 529 funds owned by the parents have a low impact on financial aid calculations, which protects the child's future FAFSA application.
But the big drawback has always been the rigidity. If you take the funds out for non-qualified expenses, like if your kid decides to start a business instead of going to college, you pay income tax plus a 10% penalty on the earnings. And the investment options have historically been kind of limited?
Historically, yes. But here's the new, groundbreaking provision that dramatically shifts the whole flexibility calculation, the Secure 2.0 Act.
Okay.
It now allows for tax-free rollovers from a 529 plan into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary, with certain conditions.
Wait, hold on. You're saying if the child doesn't use all the money, we can just roll it into a retirement account for them. That completely addresses the single biggest fear about oversaving in a 529.
Exactly. The rollover is limited to the lifetime contribution limit of a Roth IRA, up to $35,000, and the 529 account has to have been open for at least 15 years. But this new rule basically eliminates the penalty risk and transforms the 529 from a restrictive college savings account into a powerful, multi-generational, tax-advantaged vehicle.
Wow, that really makes the 529 much more appealing. Okay, so what about the standard brokerage account? Why would a family still choose that given the tax drag?
Total flexibility. No restrictions on withdrawals for any reason. If the child needs money for a down payment on a house at 25, you can take it out. You have the broadest possible range of investment options. The downside, of course, is capital gains taxes and the fact that these assets are counted more heavily in financial aid calculations.
So the conclusion now seems to lean pretty heavily toward the 529, especially with that new rollover rule, if the goal is maximizing tax benefits and intergenerational wealth. But the brokerage account still wins for instant liquidity.
Right. A lot of families end up doing a hybrid strategy. Prioritize the 529 first to get any state tax deductions, and then use a taxable account if contributions exceed their goals.
Okay, so beyond the accounts, the most profound financial gift is instilling what you call generational financial independence, raising truly fire-minded kids. This isn't about teaching them to be cheap, is it?
No, it's about teaching them value and agency. It starts with creating what I call artificial scarcity. In our modern, abundant world, it's so easy for kids to just assume everything is immediately replaceable.
You have to set limits to teach stewardship.
Exactly. When things break, don't always replace them immediately. Let them feel the consequence of loss. Limit impulse buys. If a child never has to wait or save or feel the slight inconvenience of a broken toy, they never learn to appreciate value or build resilience.
And that autonomy extends to the Montessori principle. Never do for a child what they can do for themselves. It's about fostering grit and self-reliance.
Encourage problem solving. Make them responsible for their own backpack, their schedule, or finding their own way back up after a stumble. If you're constantly swooping in to solve minor logistical or emotional problems, you're robbing them of the chance to develop competence. And that independence translates directly to financial competence later on.
And what about teaching the core fire mechanics like saving and compounding? How does an allowance system teach this effectively?
You can start around age 7 to 9 with a small, consistent allowance. But the critical part is the matching incentive. Tell them you will double whatever amount of the allowance they choose to save at the end of the week.
So if it's a $10 allowance and they save $7, I match that 7 instantly. They now have $17 for the week.
Exactly. It's an immediate, visceral lesson in compounding and delayed gratification. They instantly see that spending $10 now means losing out on $7 in free money. It accelerates their saving for that bigger ticket item, a new video game, a bike. They quickly learn the power of money growth.
The ultimate mindset shift here is that fun doesn't have to cost a lot of money. If they genuinely learn to enjoy a simpler, lower-cost lifestyle now, their future pursuit of financial independence will be exponentially easier because their needs baseline will just be naturally low.
So by mastering the education savings vehicle and instilling that financial discipline, families have addressed 2 massive hurdles. But for families looking for the most dramatic acceleration possible, we have to talk about global strategies.
That takes us to the advanced stage, geo-arbitrage with the family. This is a huge life change, but the financial payoff is enormous. How does moving the whole family abroad not only speed up FIRE, but also enrich the kids' experience? And what are the hidden risks we need to know about?
Geo-arbitrage is really the ultimate expense-cutting move. By moving from a high-cost-of-living area, like London or New York, to a place like Medellin, Colombia, or Lisbon, Portugal, you can cut your core expenses by 3, 4, even 5 times.
A 4 times expense reduction means your required FIRE number is 4 times smaller. That shaves years off your timeline. What are the specific financial benefits for the family beyond just cheaper rent and groceries?
Well, you eliminate massive domestic fixed costs, high property taxes, high car insurance, and often those high U.S. health insurance premiums. Plus, in many expat destinations, daycare and even high-quality international schooling can be free or significantly cheaper than U.S. private school.
And for high-earning families, the tax benefits can be pretty profound.
Oh, crucial for early retirement. U.S. citizens working abroad can potentially use the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, or FEIE, which lets them exclude over $130,000 of earned income from U.S. federal taxes. And if you strategically cut ties with your previous high-tax state, you also eliminate state income tax. That can save a high-earning family tens of thousands a year, which goes straight into investments.
Okay, we need to get into the weeds on the FEIE because this is critical for geo-arbitrage families. There are two ways to qualify, right? The physical presence test and the bona fide residence test.
That's correct, and the distinction really matters for families who are traveling. The physical presence test requires you to be physically present in a foreign country for 330 full days out of any consecutive 12-month period. It's pretty straightforward, but it's rigid.
And the bona fide residence test.
It's a bit more complex. It requires you to establish true residence in a foreign country for an uninterrupted period that includes an entire taxable year. You have to prove deeper ties, like local bank accounts, a local driver's license, paying local taxes.
So the bona fide test is better for families who want a permanent, settled home base abroad, while the physical presence test is better for families who plan to world school and travel constantly, as long as they rigorously track their days outside the U.S.
Precisely. The goal is to maximize the tax benefits, but you absolutely have to choose the test that aligns with your family's actual lifestyle.
Now, let's talk about that world schooling approach. Taking kids out of traditional structured school to learn through travel and experience. It sounds like a dream, but what are the practical and academic risks?
The whole world schooling philosophy is built on the idea that culture, history, and language are best learned through immersion. The initial phase is often called unschooling. You're allowing the child to decompress from the rigid 9-to-3 structure and just follow their natural curiosities.
But how do parents make sure core subjects like, I don't know, calculus or advanced English literature aren't missed? And what about the social component?
That's where the challenge is. Most families use specific educational apps or online curriculums for math and English, maybe dedicating an hour a day to structured learning. The rest of it, the languages, culture, biology through scuba diving or hiking, is all experiential.
But what happens when the child who's been traveling the world decides at 16 they want to go to a traditional, highly accredited U.S. university? Do they have a hard time getting accepted because they don't have a normal transcript? And are they socially isolated?
That is the crucial risk. Parents have to be proactive in finding accredited programs that can provide an official transcript if the university path is likely. And yes, isolation is a real threat. Expat families have to intentionally seek out other traveling families, join local co-ops, or participate in local sports to maintain social connections. Otherwise, the constant novelty of travel can start to outweigh the need for stable friendships.
Now, the greatest financial unknown for any early retiree, and especially a FIRE family, is health insurance. Geo-arbitrage or staying domestic, this is the single most complicated piece of the puzzle.
You have to fireproof your health safety net. For domestic U.S. fire, the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, is the mechanism. It's asset blind. Your multi-million-dollar investment portfolio is irrelevant. Only your modified adjusted gross income, your MAGI, matters.
And the subsidy eligibility goes surprisingly high. For a family of 4, the cutoff for subsidies can be around $145,000 of MAGI, depending on the year.
And this is where the technical genius of early retirement tax planning comes in. FIRE families manage their MAGI meticulously to stay within that subsidy range, often below 400% of the federal poverty level.
How do they even manipulate their MAGI when they have large portfolios?
By using what we call the 4 pillars of tax planning, utilizing Roth conversions, strategic capital gains harvesting, tax loss harvesting, and strategic withdrawals from tax-free accounts, like Roth principle. If you have large taxable accounts, you can sell depreciated assets, that's tax loss harvesting, to offset your capital gains, keeping your net NGI low enough to qualify for substantial premium tax credits. It's a very deliberate year-to-year process.
Wait, so you're telling me a family of 4 with a net worth over $2 million can strategically plan their income using tax loss harvesting and Roth conversions to pull an income of, say, $140,000 for the year and still get significant ACA subsidies to make their healthcare affordable? How is that even ethical, and how is that math possible?
It is entirely legal and based on the rules as they're currently written. You are using the structure of the tax-advantaged accounts, The fact that Roth withdrawals are not mad GI to control the single factor that determines your eligibility, taxable income. The ability to control your NGI is the keystone of domestic family fire.
But if you're the expat family, the domestic ACA is out.
Then you absolutely must have robust international health insurance, like a global medical plan. These are specialized policies that cover emergency evacuation, preventative care in various countries, emergency reunion benefits, maternity coverage. They are vital because a standard U.S. policy won't cover long-term residency abroad, and a catastrophic event overseas could instantly wipe out your entire nest egg.
We've covered cost mitigation and these advanced location strategies. Now for the final, non-negotiable step, fireproofing the family. If the unthinkable happens, a disability or death, what is the legal and insurance paperwork every fire family must get in place immediately to safeguard the children?
This is the estate planning fire drill. And it's not about minimizing taxes. It's about protecting the people you love most.
Let's start with protecting your income stream through insurance. Disability insurance is so often overlooked in the rush to get life insurance.
Disability is maybe even more critical for an early retiree than life insurance, because the probability of being disabled for 90 days or more before you're 65 is far higher than the probability of death. You need long-term disability insurance, which ideally costs about 1 to 3% of your income.
And why should someone supplement their employer's group plan?
Because group benefits are usually taxable, and the coverage is controlled by the employer. You want an individual policy that's non-taxable and portable, and you have to look for the own occupation rider.
Okay, why is that own occupation rider so important for a high-income professional on the fire path?
It's the highest level of protection you can get. It means you receive benefits if you can't perform the specific duties of your highly trained profession, even if you could technically work another job, like sweeping floors. Without it, the insurance company might argue you can earn income somewhere else and deny the full benefit. As your portfolio grows, you can reduce the coverage, but canceling it entirely requires some very careful risk modeling because of the long retirement horizon.
Next up, life insurance. Term life versus whole life for the family unit.
For families with young kids, the priority is high coverage at a low cost, which means term life insurance. It provides a massive death benefit, millions, potentially, for the 10 to 30 years you need to protect your dependents while you're building your nest egg. Whole life insurance, while it builds cash value, is exponentially more expensive and is not the priority during that capital accumulation phase.
And what about insuring children, especially if a child has a disability or special needs?
If a child has a special need, their insurability can be compromised later. So you can use a child rider on the parent's policy, which provides coverage until they're 22 to 25 and is convertible to a permanent policy. That guarantees their insurability regardless of future health issues.
Now, the non-negotiable legal documents, the actual fire drill. Beyond a basic will, what specific estate planning tools do fire families need?
Number 1, guardianship. Without a will or trust that clearly names guardians, the state decides who raises your children. This has to be the very first thing a new parent addresses.
And what about trusts? A simple will might transfer the assets, but trusts protect the money for the children over time, right?
Exactly. Fire families often need more than just a will. They need a revocable living trust. Trusts ensure that the assets are managed for the children over a specified period, maybe with staggered payments at age 25, 30, and 35. This prevents a young adult from getting a massive, life-changing lump sum at age 18.
And if a child has special needs?
Then you absolutely need a special needs trust. This is so critical because it allows you to leave assets for the child without jeopardizing their eligibility for crucial government benefits like Medicaid or SSI. The assets are managed for their supplemental needs, housing, therapy, without being counted as their personal assets.
So we need centralized, secure access to everything.
Yes, you need a fireproof, safe or secure cloud storage with all the wills, trusts, powers of attorney for finance and healthcare, advanced directives, insurance policies. But the modern necessity is the digital component.
Which is often the hardest part, just accessing accounts after an emergency.
You have to compile a secure, step-by-step instruction guide for accessing critical accounts, online banking, investment platforms, social media. You need to designate who to call first. The financial advisor, the insurance agent, the executor. Emergency instructions are vital. How does the trustee access the emergency fund, the 3 to 6 months of expenses? That's needed immediately while the estate is settled.
Finally, let's talk about the exit strategy. Roth conversions as a tax optimization tool in early retirement. How does this protect the legacy for the children?
Roth conversions are a cornerstone strategy for early retirees who have large traditional IRA or 401k balances. In those early retirement years, when your earned income is low before Medicare, before Social Security, you strategically convert traditional IRA assets to Roth assets. You fill up the lower tax bracket, say up to the top of the 24% bracket, using taxable funds to pay the tax bill on the conversion.
And why do this? Why pay the tax now?
Two big reasons. First, it minimizes your future required minimum distributions, or RMDs, which can become these tax bombs later in life. Second, and this is crucial for legacy, Roth assets are inherited completely tax-free. They also continue to compound tax-free for the heirs.
The break-even point on a Roth conversion is often cited as being really long, 30 years or more, unless future tax rates are much higher. How does the legacy part change that math?
The inheritance factor shortens the time dramatically. If you leave a traditional IRA to an heir, they generally have to draw down that whole account within 10 years, creating a huge tax bill during their own peak earning years. If you leave a Roth account, the money comes out tax-free forever. That inheritance benefit alone shortens the conversion break-even point to 20 or 25 years, making it a powerful generational wealth transfer strategy, regardless of what future tax rates do. So we've established today that the cost of raising children is not a wall. It's a highly solvable challenge, as long as you apply the core principles of financial independence: strategic adjustment to income, relentless optimization of spending, and robust legal preparation.
And the most important insight we found throughout this whole discussion: the greatest financial gift you can possibly give your children isn't a massive inheritance or a lifetime supply of designer shoes or even a college fund. It is time. It's the ability to step away from the daily grind and be present to teach them financial discipline, independence, and the joy of low-cost, high-value experiences. The memories they'll truly cherish are the ones that required nothing more than your undivided attention.
This deep commitment to risk management, from the own occupation rider on your disability insurance to the special needs trust, ensures that even if your fire date gets delayed from 40 to 50, you have comprehensive structures in place to protect the security and long-term goals of your family against any crisis, whether it's a sudden illness, a market collapse, or a global pandemic.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought. We've been discussing money, but let's talk about well-being for a second. Researchers often categorize childhood adversity into two types: acute threat-based experiences, like violence or bullying, and chronic deprivation, which includes persistent financial strain, neglect, or chronic parental stress.
And the research suggests that chronic deprivation, that persistent parental financial strain and the stress that comes from it, has a stronger and more persistent link to depression, anxiety, and behavioral issues in adolescence than those acute threat-based experiences.
So if that's true, then achieving family fire, which fundamentally requires and alleviates chronic parental financial strain and the stress of the daily grind, it's not just a financial move. Does it serve as the ultimate long-term mental and emotional health investment for your children? It proves that true financial independence is about safeguarding the next generation's well-being as much as maximizing your own nest egg.
It forces us to redefine what success really looks like. It's not the biggest portfolio, it's the most secure and present family. And that is the true return on investment for Family Fire.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast on Project Fire. We hope this has given you the technical blueprint and the philosophical clarity required to combine your financial aspirations with your family dreams.